2 weeks before my wedding, I found out the woman, who'd been my best friend for 15 years, had stolen $22,000 meant for my caterer, my florist, and my venue, and I found out because those vendors started calling to say they hadn't been paid. Mia and I met freshman year of college and stayed close for 15 years after that. The kind of friendship where she was in every important photo of my adult life, including, eventually, as my wedding planner. She'd started her own event planning business 3 years earlier, and when I got engaged, letting her plan the wedding felt natural, even generous. I trusted her completely. I gave her access to a joint vendor account funded by my fiancé and me, $41,000 total, meant to be paid out to vendors, as deposits and final payments came due over the 10 months of planning. Looking back, there were signs I dismissed because dismissing them was easier than doubting Mia. She'd occasionally mention a vendor was being difficult about payment timing, which I now understand meant she hadn't actually paid them. She'd show me invoices that, in hindsight, were formatted strangely, slightly different from the vendor's actual branding, though at the time I had no reason to compare them closely. When my mother, who'd contributed to the wedding fund, asked to see a full accounting of expenses around month 7, Mia got oddly defensive, said it felt like we didn't trust her, and I actually apologized to her for my mother's question. I apologized for someone questioning where $22,000 of my own money had gone. The catering company called 12 days before the wedding, polite but firm, saying they hadn't received the final payment that was due 3 weeks earlier and needed it within 48 hours, or they'd have to cancel. I called Mia in a panic, assuming a processing error. She assured me she'd handle it. She did not handle it. 2 days later, the florist called with the same story. Then the venue's event coordinator, asking about an outstanding balance I'd been told for months was fully paid. I stopped calling Mia and started calling the vendors directly, asking for full payment histories. What emerged over the next 24 hours was that Mia had been paying vendors partial amounts, sometimes significantly less than what she'd told me she'd paid, and creating invoices for me that inflated the real costs, pocketing the difference. Some vendors had received nothing at all despite my believing, based on her invoices, that they'd been paid in full months earlier. Across every vendor combined, the shortfall came to just over $22,000. Money that had been sitting in the account I'd trusted her with, meant for the people making my wedding happen, simply gone. I confronted her that night, and she didn't deny it once I laid out what I had found. She said her business had been struggling more than she'd let on, that she'd taken small amounts at first meaning to replace them before I noticed, and that the amounts had grown faster than she could manage. She apologized, but the apology felt secondary to her relief at finally not having to maintain the lie. I didn't have space to process the betrayal fully in that moment, because I had 11 days to either find $22,000 or watch my wedding fall apart. My fiancé and I emptied savings we'd set aside for our first year of marriage, and my parents covered what was left, to pay every vendor in full and keep the wedding intact. The wedding happened. Mia was not there. I removed her as a bridesmaid and planner within 48 hours of the confrontation, which meant scrambling to cover her responsibilities in the final stretch, on top of everything else. I filed a police report and, separately, a civil suit to recover what she'd taken. It's still working through the courts, slow the way these things